folks, welcome to Whiskey Web Wednesday. I'm your host Leon Webb, and today I will talk you through some thoughts on this weird and wonderful whiskey from Edradour distillery. Anyone who has been to Scotland has probably travelled up the A9 at some point between Edinburgh and Inverness, and after about an hour and a half on the road, you'll come across this little place called Pitlochry. Pitlochry is essentially the heart of the Highlands. It's the main point where the mountains start getting bigger, and it's surrounded by beautiful forests, and it's got Benvrackie Mountain nearby, and it's also home to one of the smallest, cutest distilleries in Scotland. So if you've ever been there, you'll know what I'm talking about. If you haven't, I highly recommend you go. But Edradour distillery is picture perfect. It looks like a postcard. It's these small whitewashed buildings, beautiful red doors. You got the old cart there that collects the mash from the mash tun. You know, you go back in time. Edradour itself, it was established in 1825, and I think the name Edradour, it comes from Gaelic, and it's in between two burns. That's what it stands for. And you've got this beautiful running water coming through the distillery site, and the constant chitter chatter of water on rocks. So it's a beautiful location, stunning backdrop, and they do things very traditionally there. The only place that's probably older or more traditional would be Glenturret Distillery just down the road. But Edradour here is, yeah, it's one of those places where if you're going to take people to one distillery just for some photos, then it's probably this one that you want to go to. Like, I actually worked there for a summer as a tour guide, and it was very, very busy. You get like busloads of tourists from all over Europe and the world. Previous years though, the tours used to be free, and I think they had up to like 100,000 visitors a year, and it just got inundated, this tiny little site. So I think they charge about £10 for a tour now, but yeah, definitely worth checking out. So as I was saying, it was established in 1825, smallest distillery in Scotland if you exclude all the micro distilleries that have popped up in the last 10 or 15 years. The spirit still is only 2,200 litres. It's a very small, stumpy still, which means the spirit has a lot of copper contact time, or you know, there's a lot of copper relative to the amount of spirit in the pot. So it's quite an oily spirit. It comes through, it doesn't have high to go in terms of vertical distance on the still, so you get this nice sort of oily spirit from Edradour. It's also famous for the Morton refrigerator. Now, it's probably the only distillery in Scotland that has a Morton refrigerator. And this is a very old way of cooling liquid. Most distilleries use a heat exchanger, whereas the Morton refrigerator, it's almost like it looks like a foosball table, that kind of thing. And the liquid flows over and under these plates that go across this table. And within the plates you get cold running water, so that's how it's getting cooled down slowly as it travels through the Morton's refrigerator. And it's pretty cool. Like, you can put your hand over this thing and you can almost feel just the temperature cooling on the liquid. So that's a very unique feature. It's also got worm tubs for the condensers on the back of these small stubby stills, and that's very traditional as well. And it also has a very old mash tun. It's over 110 years old. It's only like a 1 ton mash tun, and it's open, so it's a bit like the one at Brookladdie. You can see all the barley and water mixing there, and it's got these old rakes that turn. But the thing about Edradour is that it's hand shoveled. So a ton of barley at the end of every shift has to be hand shoveled out of the mash tun onto the conveyor belt, and then that takes it to the trailer outside. And that's a hot, sweaty job, believe me, not one for the faint-hearted. So one of the things they used to do, they don't do anymore I don't think, but they used to lime the washbacks. And this is a very old technique for cleaning the washbacks or the fermenters. So you don't almost have like a witch's broom, a stick with some sort of twigs on the end, and then they would dip the twiggy end into like a bucket of lime, and then they would wipe this up and down the inside of the washbacks, and the lime acted as the sort of disinfectant, as it were, for the fermenter. So very old traditional technique. And it's also home to Signatory Vintage, which do a lot of different bottlings from around Scotland. So they might do Lefroy, like Blair Athol, or whatever. They've got a lot of interesting casks at the warehouses at Edradour because of Signatory Vintage. So it's not just Edradour's stock maturing, there's a lot of stock maturing for Signatory Vintage, and this is all their independently sourced casks that they'll then bottle under the Signatory Vintage label. And you can actually get some really good deals, some good whiskies. I remember there was a Port Ellen or something bottled by Signatory Vintage, and it was only about £400 or £500 at the time, so it wasn't too bad, relative to what you pay for the official bottling stuff. So definitely worth checking out. I remember as well when I was in the shop, Dougie MacLean. There was this song called Caledonia, which you may be aware of, and Dougie MacLean actually did a bottling for Edradour. I think it was a 12-year-old Edradour called the Caledonian. And because Dougie MacLean, the famous folk musician, did this song, he teamed up with Edradour. But for the staff in the shop, it was a nightmare. It was hell on earth, because you just have this song on repeat all day long, and you come out and you're like, oh, thank God, that's enough Dougie MacLean for one day. But brilliant song, if heard once a day, maybe not like 50 times a day. And when I was there, I actually stayed in the Moulin Inn just down the road, which is a beautiful old pub. I remember like the Brazilian barman, very generous with his pours, and a great place to have lunch if you're ever in the area. So check out the Moulin Inn as well. So here we have Edradour, straight from the cask. Now this is cask strength whiskey, so no dilution at all. They've just taken it as it was from the cask, and this is one of the many wine influenced whiskies at Edradour. I remember when I was working there, there was like Barolos and Chardonnays, and this one's a Chateauneuf du Pape. So lots and lots of different wine finishes available in the shop there. So they like to experiment a little. And the thing they had in the Moulin Inn in the pub was all these were used on their side to hold the ketchup and the salt and the pepper. So it's quite handy if you're a restaurateur and you're looking for a handy little box for your condiments. That's a nice little thing to do with the packaging after. So this one here is aged for 11 years. It was distilled on the 28th of May 2002, and it was matured in hogsheads and then disgorged on the 28th of February 2011. So that was the initial maturation, and that will be ex-bourbon hogsheads. And then for the second maturation, or the finishing maturation, finished in a Chateauneuf du Pape hogshead, and it went into the cask on the 28th of February 2011, and it was bottled on the 20th of February 2014. So a 3-year finishing there in the wine cask. And there was only 424 bottles that came from this cask, so this is a rare whiskey indeed. And you may notice that the size is quite small as well. This is a 500ml bottle, so not your regular 700ml that you would get in the UK. 58.9% alcohol. So let's give this a whirl. I'm imagining there's going to be a lot of wine notes in here. Right off the bat, you see the colour there. Very intense. It's rich berry jam, it's tannins. Blackberries. A bit of like really ripe fruit, almost just at the point where it's about to become bruised. So your stewed fruits. Maybe a bit of prune, apricot, raisin. Let's give it a taste. It's like a Highland toffee cream. That Edradour spirit is so distinctive. I've tried a lot of the wine finishes for Edradour, and that distillery character comes through all of them. Bit of Werther's original caramel in there. Now I'm getting like a blueberry cheesecake tart kind of flavour. Yeah, very good. So this is good strong whiskey for a really cold wet day here in Canada, and yeah, it's with a pleasure I'm drinking this now. So well done Edradour for coming up with an innovative wine finished release. Let's just enjoy that beautiful box one more time. There you have it. So Edradour, straight from the cask, the pinkest, smallest whiskey in the world. Cheers everyone!